A vampire is a mythological creature from Slavic mythology that survives by feeding on the life energy of living beings. The word vampire first appeared in a report published in the Wienerisches Diarium newspaper in 1725. The first Serbian vampire mentioned in folk beliefs is Petar Blagojević, often referred to as Petar from Kablari or Petar the vampire. For a long time it was believed that Sava Savanović was the first Serbian vampire, but we will talk about him a bit later. According to folk tales, Petar Blagojević was an ordinary man from a village near Kablari, which became known because of his dreadful fate. He lived in the 18th century, and before he became known as a vampire, he was an ordinary Serbian peasant. Although historical records of his life are not clearly documented, the legend claims that he was known for living a peaceful life until he died in 1725 from an illness. According to the tradition, Petar was buried incorrectly, and his fate as a vampire began after his death. Soon after his death, an epidemic struck the village, resulting in the deaths of several locals, with the deceased showing suspicious symptoms characteristic of mysterious deaths caused by vampirism. The villagers started saying that Petar Blagojević had become a vampire, which caused panic and fear among the villagers. Many claimed on their deathbeds that the deceased Blagojević had appeared to them at night, choking them. His wife fled shortly after these strange events, saying that her deceased husband came to her in a dream, asking for his slippers. After several people died under mysterious circumstances, the church and local authorities decided to take drastic action. When Petar Blagojevic's body was exhumed, it was believed that the body was untouched and appeared fresh. This was a sign for the villagers that he had become a vampire. According to folk beliefs, they were convinced that a vampire, as a bloated corpse, did not immediately decay but remained in such a state to continue its dreadful actions. After exhuming his body, the local authorities decided to perform the rituals they believed were necessary to eliminate a vampire. According to the story, Petar's body was soaked in blood and his eyes were protruding. The village then organized a ritual that involved cutting his body and killing him in the Serbian tradition by driving a stake through his heart. They then burned the body on a fire to destroy all traces of vampirism. After these actions, the epidemic ceased and the villagers returned to their lives. Petar Blagojević became a name that entered Serbian folk traditions, where he became one of the most famous Serbian vampires. For many, this event was a warning about what could happen if burial customs and beliefs were not respected, all tied to fears and the ignorance of natural laws. The role of the church and priests. Although the church was not always willing to intervene in vampire-related customs, in the case of Petar Blagojević, church leaders were crucial in confirming his vampire fate. The legend suggests that the priest decided to perform the ritual after being convinced that Petar was responsible for the deaths of the villagers. This shows how religion and folk beliefs were closely intertwined in society at the time. Sava Savanović. He was born in the 18th century in the village of Zaroj, located in central Serbia. According to the legend, Sava Savanović was a wealthy merchant from the village of Zaroj, who, as a mature man, fell in love with a girl much younger than him. Although he had serious intentions, the girl's father rejected him. After that, Sava changed, becoming grumpy and nervous. And very quickly, out of revenge, he killed the girl and could not hide. Villagers who witnessed the event beat him with hoes. In Sava's time, belief in supernatural forces was widespread, and vampires were part of daily life, something people believed in, and which often formed the basis of fears and superstitions. After his death, he was buried near a mill not far from the village, and that is when the mysterious deaths of millers began. For more than 250 years, people have believed that the vampire Sava Savanović killed them by first choking them and then drinking all their blood. This led to a fear of approaching the mill, and it slowly decayed, with little talk of its restoration, as the residents of Zarožje feared that after its renovation, Sava might seek a new home and inhabit someone's house. Due to his evil life, Sava became a vampire who continued to terrorize his fellow villagers. As the years passed, the stories grew darker and scarier, and Sava Savanović became a symbol of vampirism. Known throughout the Balkans, Savanović's death, according to folklore. Sava Savanović died under mysterious circumstances. Although the exact date of his death is unknown, stories suggest that he died in his home, where he was often seen retreating to a dark room, avoiding people. It was believed that his death was actually the beginning of his transformation into a vampire. Many said they heard footsteps at night, knocking on doors and unexplained sounds, but they dared not investigate the cause of these noises. People claimed to have seen Savanović's shadow moving through the fog and twilight, and many said they experienced misfortunes, illnesses, or even death during those moments. As a result, rituals, beliefs, and customs spread to prevent his return, such as burning the body or driving nails into the ground. Sava became an established symbol of fear. Zarožje became a place that seemed haunted to most people, and every evening in all the villages, stories of misfortunes were told, with the belief that these were the consequences of Savanović's wrongdoings. People were afraid to go out at night, and lights became a symbol of hope and protection from evil forces. Although the story of Sava calmed down in the 20th century, his legend has never completely disappeared. Despite efforts by authorities to prevent the spread of these stories and explanations, they have persisted through generations. One of the last moments when the story of Sava became even more embedded in Serbian culture was in literature and film, where his character became the central figure in depicting vampirism in the Balkans. Milovan Glišić, a Serbian writer, wrote a short story, After 20 Years, in which Sava Savanović is mentioned. This famous vampire also appeared in the horror movie Leptirica in 1973. If we sit and consider the writings and stories about these two vampires, it could be certain that Sava Savanović is the more famous Serbian vampire. However, experts argue that Petar Blagojević lived before him and that after him the stories about vampires began. What do you think?